Kirk Rafferty, welcome to the Rocky Mountain Writer Podcast.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. So we have a few things to talk about. The main topic, the marquee topic we're going to talk about today is just the whole querying process, which you are in the middle of, and is something pretty much every writer has to go through if you're going to go through the traditional publishing approach, and is something that I think as an experience is all the frustrations are well known, but it never hurts to talk about the realities of that kind of aspect of the business. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you just a little bit about your background and also a little bit about your role helping RMFW as director of social media. But let's just start out. Can you just tell us where you live, how long you've been writing? Just tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so, and first of all, let me apologize for my blurred background. I'm doing some construction back here. And so I didn't want you to see all the tools and stuff.
I like it. I like it.
Or my corkboard up there with my new plan of evil for my next book. But so I live in Arvada, Colorado. I am actually one of the few native Coloradans, and I've left the state a couple times, but I just always seem to come back, and I'm probably home for good at this point. Just love Colorado. I have been writing since I don't remember when I wasn't writing, actually. So I used to make comic books in grade school when I was a kid. I wasn't a great artist, but I always had friends that were good artists, and so I took on the role as the writer, and they did that. But yeah, I've been writing for ever since then, and it took me a really long time to finally decide, you know what, my stuff I think is actually good enough to put out there. I probably should have started a lot earlier, actually trying to turn it into something more professional. And so, one thing I would say is anybody out there that loves to write, like, just don't hesitate, get your stuff out there. It is almost definitely good enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
What kind of what genre are you drawn to?
So the current novel that I'm querying, and it was actually something that I hadn't even really read much of or anything like that, but now I'm completely steeped in it, is historical fiction. This is more of a kind of a historical action adventure type thing. I didn't want to go quite literary. I wanted there to be, just something to put you on the edge of your seat at the end of every chapter. And so I think I set out to do that, and I think I accomplished it. But I love just the historical fiction as a genre. I'm just really digging. I absolutely love it.
What is tell us a little bit about the book itself. I know in a minute I'm going to ask you to read the query letter, which I think is its own art form, and it's got all these kind of different people who have different ideas about how exactly you need to craft the query letter. But just generally, tell us where it's set and what the title is, and tell it again. Yeah, and then I'm going to ask you a little bit about how long you've been working on it.
Okay, perfect. So this book, it's called The Cosmonaut and The Fisherman. For the longest time, for years, I had this kind of notion in my head, like, because I'm a real big space nerd. And so for a time, I was a Navy brat growing up. We lived in Orlando for a while and got to go to Kennedy Space Center. And I just steeped myself in it. I love the space race. There's so many, especially if you're a writer, there's so much you can draw from that. And so I imagined what would happen if an astronaut landed or crash landed in the Soviet Union, right? And for the longest time, I had this idea in my head. And then one day I thought, you know what, let's turn that around and let's have a Soviet cosmonaut crash in the middle of the United States. I thought that would be more interesting. And so that's what I did. So I wrote a book about a Soviet cosmonaut who crashes into Heartland, Texas, on a ranch in the middle of nowhere. and there are two children that live there. And both of their parents have passed. The children are terrified that social services is going to take them away and separate them. So they've been keeping their father's death a complete secret. And this is what my cosmonaut lands into. They find her in the barn, and
Her, the
her,
female.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So this is another thing I kind of imagine. You know, it's as a writer, you're always kind of trying to like up the stakes, but up just kind of like take the known and push that a little further. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting, if it's a woman cosmonaut. And I've got a whole backstory then on this kind of supposed program that's actually based in reality. The Soviets really did start a women's cosmonaut program. They didn't get very far with it until I think until the 70s. But this one, I just imagine, a kind of a duplicate cosmonaut training type program, but they're going to use the women for actually spying on the United States. And so she's sent up on a secret mission. Nobody knows about it. And it's great because in the 1960s, we didn't have satellites in space. We didn't have a way to track all these things. And so in the 1960s, you could launch a rocket, you could launch something into orbit. And if it was super quiet, nobody would really know it was up there unless you were really specifically looking for it. So this is my premise then is, I have this Soviet cosmonaut, she lands, she now has completely endangered these children who are trying to keep their own situations a secret. And then, eventually the FBI kind of gets a sniff that she might be out there, and then everything just kind of tumbles after that.
Yeah. Wow. I was about to ask you what year it was set because that would have a lot to do with how you could, keep this under the radar, so to speak, literally under the radar,
Right. Yeah. So this is 1961.
Yeah, that's great. Quick aside, have you seen the TV show For All Mankind?
I have, yes. And I was actually, hot and heavy into writing this book when All Mankind came out, and I thought, oh my gosh, like the space race is coming back. Like people are starting to get interested again. And I thought that, by the time I'm ready to query this book, everybody's going to be space race crazy. It has not turned out that way. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of All Mankind. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, there's for those who don't know, the reason I brought it up is there's a lot of female astronauts in the show, and B, there's tons of Russian female and male
That's right.
cosmonauts in the show. And so it really just made me instantly think of that show, which is I think on its fourth or fifth season, and lots of big name actors in it.
Yes.
Myself, I think it went a little off the rails when they went to Mars and just got a little too kind of drawn out, but that was, that's just me. Yeah.
The first couple seasons are the absolute best.
Yeah.
This is where because the 1960s is a really interesting period for if you are really kind of studying the space programs. It's amazing what they did with so little technology. And I read up so much on that. And so it's fun to see, especially in that first and second season, they really are using and they take a few liberties here and there, but for the most part, they are using technologies that they really used in the 1960s. And it's fantastic to see that. I'm a big fan of like Star Trek too. But for me, like the old Star Trek show is kind of fun to watch because it's, they also they dealt with more fantastic type technologies and things, but it was still very simple.
Yeah.
And so these kind of constraints are really fun to work within. If I've got my whole opening scene is is this cosmonaut coming down through a thunderstorm because the capsule is completely off course, and we didn't actually know this until the collapse of the Soviet Union, but those initial Soviet capsules, the Soviets didn't know how to land one with the astronauts, with the cosmonauts still inside and not kill them. And so what they would do is once they hit a certain altitude after deorbiting, is the cosmonaut would be ejected and they would come down on their own parachute. And so
No, thank
I
you. No, thank you.
recreate, right? So I recreate the scene, and she is parachuting through a thunderstorm, and has to survive this thunderstorm, which doesn't go great for her. But yeah.
All right. So let's one last question before we get to the querying process. How long would you say you spent working on this draft, and before you were ready to query and thought it was ready for prime time? What other steps did you take in the process? Beta readers, friends? Did you hire an editor? Anything like that?
Yeah, so the idea and various kind of fits and starts and everything like that, it's probably went back about 8 years. So in some capacity, I've been working on this for 8 years. I got serious about it about 3 years ago. And basically just set everything aside that I had already done, except the research that I had done and notes and things like that. And I sat down. I actually started writing this book a lot more seriously. So, almost a decade in the making, but the words on the page itself, it took me about 2 years to write, and then the querying after that.
Any beta readers or editors?
So I put it up for beta reading. I threw a call for beta readers out onto my Facebook feed, and I thought I might get, if I got 1 or 2 people that said yes and actually committed, I was going to be super happy. And I got like 20.
Wow.
And some of them were friends and family, but a lot of them were friends of friends that I didn't know. And those are the best ones because, my friends and family are all going to tell me what a wonderful book it is. Although I will say that I was actually really happy with I did get some very constructive criticism, even from friends and family. But yeah, so I put it out in front of beta readers. I got super fantastic feedback. And then I did a lot of rewriting. And then eventually I did hire a developmental editor. And, if you look on Twitter, there's a lot of controversy on some people say you don't have to hire a developmental editor, and I absolutely agree. You don't have to hire a developmental editor. So I was in the position I was able to hire a really good developmental editor, and she came back to me and had fantastic feedback. So it was another round of kind of rewriting and rewriting, and at some point, I just decided I think this thing is about as ready as it's going to be. Now,
Yeah.
in the process of querying, I've gone back and made, I don't know, a zillion additional finer tuning edits and things like that. But that developmental edit, I think, was really the kind of the final time that I really put it through the ringer.
Yeah, that is great. The reason I asked that is I just wanted to, I think all the advice out there, the good advice, in my opinion, is to do exactly what you did, that you don't just finish a book, call it good, and start querying, that it's a really good idea to get some reader take. And I think part of that is just taking a step back yourself and allowing the time for a few other people to read it, come back with fresh eyes, and also just incorporate, imagine when you do publish it, you're going to get reader feedback then too. You may as well get some now, because if there's some consistent themes that emerge, you may as well try to address those if you can.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. You have to have at least another set of eyeballs on your book besides your own, and that's hard to do. So. I quickly said I put it out for beta reading. Let me tell you, I struggled with this. I went to post it so many times and said, it's not ready yet. And when I finally did hit that post button, I wanted to kind of curl up in a ball and, just hide away. But yeah, it's you absolutely have to have eyes on the book that are not your own, and preferably people that don't know you as well as like your spouse or your friends and family.
Yeah.
Um, your friends and family are so super well meaning, but they're going to go easier on you. You want a beta reader who's going to just tell you like, boy, this chapter was boring.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So let's hear your query letter if you don't mind reading it for us. That'll let people know what this message that goes out to the universe in very few words has to cover so much ground, and it's a real challenge to condense it, but we'd love to hear it.
Absolutely. So this is my query letter. Dear Agent, I'm thrilled to present you my novel, The Cosmonaut and the Fisherman, a 90,000 word adult historical. A character driven story steeped in the space race and Cold War of the 1960s, it has the pervasive found family heart of First Cosmic Velocity by Zach Powers, with the unexpected discovery of relationships established while undercover, seen in American Spy by Lauren Wilkinson. The emotional pulls, coping with trauma, and self-discovery found in the Quick by Kate Day Hope tie the characters and their stories together, infused with tragedy and dark humor found in A Gentleman in Moscow, Immortals. I hope I said his name right. I think I butchered it. So that first paragraph then, really is kind of tells you that's got all kind of the metadata in it and everything like that. And it's also got my comps as well. I've got 4 comps in here. I probably should only have 3 comps. The reason I threw A Gentleman in Moscow in is because it's really hot right now. And people identify with it immediately. So then I go into kind of the summaries. Soviet cosmonaut Victoria Vika Rusanova crash lands in Cold War America and must escape her pursuers before they capture her and the secrets she carries. 15-year-old Tabby Shelton and 10-year-old Giles Shelton live alone on the family ranch, trying to keep their father's death a secret to avoid being separated by the state. When they discover Vika in their barn, they realize she's brought catastrophe to their doorstep. After initial hostilities, the 3 form an uneasy alliance. When the police and FBI descend on the ranch, the unlikely trio must flee, and Vika must choose between abandoning the children or help the young orphans survive the calamity she's brought down upon them. Pursued by an FBI agent with his own agenda, Vika must also untangle her own inner conflicts, including the death of her lover she unwittingly betrayed, and the dawning realization that even as she attempts to evade capture and complete her mission, her country has already disavowed her. Tabby and Giles must also come to terms with the possibility that, along with the loss of their parents and their home, they could lose each other. Their journey will conclude in a life or death showdown that will test their loyalty and faith in each other. I have some contest placements then that I list in here. So The Cosmonaut and the Fisherman won 3rd place in the adventure category of the Historical Novel Society UK's 2024 First Chapters competition, and is a top 10 semi-finalist in the Clive Cussler Society's 2024 Adventure Writing Competition. Was also honorable mention in the Gutsy Great Novelist 2024 and selected as a quarterfinalist in the 2024 Screencraft Cinematic Book Competition. And then I've got a short little bio that I won't bore you with. Kirk is, lives in Colorado with his family and is on the board of directors as communications co-chair for Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers. And then just a salutation after that. Thanks for your consideration and time.
Wow, fantastic.
Thank you.
All right. And I'm going to get into questions about, the volume of submissions and queries you've sent out and what reaction you've got. And I'm also going to react. I
Sure.
really think that's an A+ query.
Thank you.
I have 2 little tiny suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
One is that I think 1961 is so key, as opposed to Cold War America covers a lot of ground. Cold War America could be what, early 50s to,
That's
mm,
right.
so I suggest adding 1961 somewhere in there, but that's just one guy's suggestion.
I'm writing this down.
And
Okay.
my other thing is, I think the issue of her having betrayed a boyfriend kind of comes out of the blue and doesn't get any weight in the, I mean, it's there and it's key, but I wonder if taking it out makes it seem a little less busy plot. We don't have to have every plot thread in the query letter. Again, one guy's suggestion, it just feels like it doesn't lead to anything. It just adds
Sure.
to all the angst she's going through. I'm done. Those are my only two comments, but I
Okay.
think it's a
Yeah.
query. So when did you start sending out the query letter, and what have you had any requests for partials or fulls? What Tell us about that whole process. How long has it been?
So I've been querying for a little over a year now. Um, I've had about 5 or 6 requests for full manuscripts. I actually have 2 out right now. 2, maybe 3. Oh, I think I've got 3 out right now,
Nice, nice.
fulls. So, as somebody said on Twitter not too long ago, it's a numbers game, right? So you've got to query, you've got to get as many queries out there as you can. I think I'm up to about 80 something queries. Um, and you essentially just have to play that numbers game, and with the intention that eventually one of them is going to hit at some point.
Yeah, it is just takes one yes to wipe out all those no's.
That's
Uh,
right. Yeah.
yeah. Um, have you got any consistent feedback from agents just in terms of the kinds of things they say? Now, I ask that knowing that agents, once they ask for a partial or a full, they're kind of obligated to say something. And usually they say it just wasn't right for me, or I'm not as excited about it as I hoped I would be. They have to feel like they say something, but occasionally an agent will take the time to give you a detailed paragraph or two.
Yeah, I will say of the full manuscripts that have been turned down by me. So I actually did have one agent just kind of disappear, just ghosted me. That's never a great feeling, but it does happen. And man, you just have to roll with these kind of punches, right? Uh, I the most of the feedback I've gotten is, and I don't kind of it's hard for me to toot my own horn, but the feedback I've gotten is, I loved your story. I don't have the network in place to sell this. Um, uh, I actually had one agent who got back and gave me a bunch of rewrites and revisions, some of which I agreed with, some of which I didn't. And ultimately, she came back and said, it is so close to this kind of story that I think I could sell, but I just can't sell it. So,
Oh,
it's also, it's what the market wants, right? It's, these agents have to build up a network of their own. And so they're pitching just like just like we're pitching. And if they don't have the right network in place, so I get that. I totally get that. I like to think that there is, at least one agent out there that with the right network that can sell it.
yeah.
So
Yep.
we'll find them.
Yeah. How do you keep your spirits up? I mean, I've heard writers who get to 15 or 20 rejections from the querying process, and they feel like they're just, climbing the steepest mountain, and they kind of turn around and walk back down.
Yeah, it's it is tough sometimes. You especially when you get a like a form rejection from an agent that you thought, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Like this fits his or her manuscript wish list perfectly, and then you just get that form rejection back with no input, no feedback or anything on it. So it is tough. I actually um, well, I will say this: surround yourself with other writers, right? Because if they're not going through this with you, they are going to go through this with you, or they have gone. So find other writers, um, that can commiserate. My oldest daughter and I actually kind of, we're writing partners, and so she gives me a lot of, like pats on the back, and she's a good influence on me.
Yeah, yeah,
uh, but yeah, it really helps to just have somebody that can kind of understand your pain
yeah,
and and and
yeah.
and yeah, and deal with that.
Do you use Query Tracker, or how do you find the agents you're going to query?
Yeah, I use Query Tracker mostly. Um, I've also gone, out on the internet. Another way to do this is to like look at books that your book comps to, and then kind of search on who represented that author. They got published, right? So I've done a lot of that too, and sometimes they're on Query Tracker, sometimes they're not. Um, a lot of times the agents that aren't on Query Tracker, especially like, if you're going to go and you think your book is, let's say, comparable to Dan Brown, like, good luck getting a hold of that guy's agent,
Yeah,
right? Because he's set for life. He's probably not taking on uh, new
he's
talent,
set for life.
or
He's set for life. His generations after him are set for life.
that's right. That's right. Yeah. Now I could be wrong. Dan Brown's agent could actually be. I don't know, but in my experience, the more famous the author, the less likely that agent is going to be available for you to query.
Yeah. Well, on a related note, and one thing that's worked for me or did work for me on one, agent relationship, and I've had several. But my current agent was found through other writers, and that is approaching other writers, asking writers who are represented by an agent that you're interested in, reaching out to them, showing you're willing to play ball, not being super high pressure, and just saying, and it would really help if you'd read that writer's stuff and be able to comment or say, I've posted a review of your latest book. I found a lot of similarities to mine. I'm just in this querying kind of purgatory and trying to get through to the other side. Would you be willing to take a look at a chapter of my novel? And if you like it, I mean, just asking then the writer to help you poke through to that agent.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
another way of networking, but yeah, yeah,
And I've got a couple writer friends who are published. I have talked to them. I've not actually broached the subject to, hey, can you give me an intro or anything like that. It feels a little weird for me. And yet, I know that if I were on the other end of that and I had a good friend who said, hey, can you make an intro? Like, I wouldn't feel bad about that because ultimately I'm not the one making the decision, right? Like, I can say, hey, agent, so and so asked me to reach out. Ball's in your court now, right?
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it is a little. I probably should be a little more aggressive about that. Not aggressive, but I should be a little more, forward about that. Yeah.
Forward, yeah, because it can be done in the most chill possible way, like low pressure, just looking for a hand up, no timeline, no nothing, just if you would consider it, that'd be great. And yeah, I do think you have to advocate for yourself as much as possible. And you're not going to do it in a bullying way. You're going to do it in a humane, recognition that we're all busy with a million things kind of a way. So Um,
That's right. Yeah.
yeah. Let's talk about, in addition to querying, pitch. Have you done a pitch session? Are you coming to Colorado Gold? Have you signed up to pitch there?
Yes. So I am signed up to pitch. I also went to Colorado Gold last year and I pitched. And I love in-person pitches, actually. Now, I actually did 3 in-person pitches. I didn't get anything out of all 3 of them, but it still was a very positive experience, and I'm glad that I did it, because what you realize, not that I ever thought any otherwise, but what you realize is, you know what, these people are human beings too, right? They are. Um, they're not their job, like, and it was, yeah, I think we had 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, to sit down and just talk with them, but it was so nice just being face to face in front of somebody whose job happens to be a literary agent, and it, just kind of talking about, hey, hey, I wrote this thing, and here's my quick little pitch, but um, yeah, so it was a very positive experience. I look forward to doing it again at this year's Colorado Gold.
Yeah. All right. Without sounding discouraging or any way negative at all, I'm just going to raise, I think, the obvious question, which is, at what point do you decide to go another route with the book? Or what point do you decide to like pull it down and say, let's write another book and just put this aside, believing it fully will find a traditional publisher at some point, but maybe it's a process of applying what you've learned to the first book, which I know is years and years and years of work, write the second book and then go out and query that and then start to develop a kind of a track record out there about, having some good projects and believing in yourself still.
Yeah, fantastic question. Um, I think that I am definitely on the, uh, very close to the end of I'm very close to exhausting agents, basically, right? Like the list of agents that I can query to. So this question has kind of weighed over me. I I am toying heavily with the idea of starting to pitch to like small publishers, who take pitches, who take manuscripts without an agent. Um, so I've actually been doing some research there. Oh, in fact, I have my manuscript into one of them. I won't mention the publisher at this point, but I do have a manuscript into one of them, on the recommendation of a friend who actually has a book with that publisher. Um, so so that's probably what's next for this book. I actually have written another book I have a first draft that I'm revising right now on another book. Um, and I know that they tell you that you're not supposed to do this. I have a sequel to this particular book in mind, that when I don't want to work on my other book, when I don't want to really work on, I've worked on some short stories that I've been doing as well. When I don't want to work on those, I sit down and I putter around with my sequel book, and it's not I'm not at the point where I'm like seriously delving into it yet, but I really love the idea of this sequel. And I never intended there to be a sequel to this. And all of a sudden I woke up one day and I was like, oh, you know what? This could actually happen. This would be cool. So I do have a lot of different irons in the fire, as you should, I think, as a writer. If all you're doing is querying, like, your first novel, and you're not writing anything else,
Yeah.
you need to write.
Yeah. That was my direction I was going with my question along those lines. That's great. Yep. Well, one other thought I had, I'm just wondering if the fact that you are on social media and you're out there in the conversation, if that helps you in a way, because I'm also actively involved on Twitter, aka X. I'm actively involved on, I actually have a TikTok account and sort of see some of the writer stuff out there on TikTok. And, I'm just on social media. And there are a lot of writers in your boat who are out there querying on the pitch hashtag, things where you can tell that they're looking for agents. There are a lot of writers out there looking for an agent. You're not alone. It's good to know you're not alone. And in some ways, it's probably daunting also to say, get out of here. I want to, fewer people on the boat here.
There is a fantastic writing community on Twitter.
Yeah.
And so, when we talked earlier about, support networks, right? That's even though, I don't know most of these people, but, when somebody posts something and I go, oh my God, that's me. Like, I so identify that. That's really nice. It's validating, right?
Yeah.
So there was a thing called a blackout query rejection thing, little meme that was going around that is so funny. It's basically people taking their query rejections and blacking out everything except just a few words that's don't contact me again or something like that, right? And so that it's really funny. It's kind of some black humor, some gallows humor. But it's just little things like that go, oh yeah, I am definitely not alone in this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I also have to ask you, are you enjoying being the social media guy for Rocky Mountain fiction writers?
Yeah, it's definitely it's a way to get the word out, to what Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers is doing. So I'm glad to kind of take part in that. And yeah. So I have nothing negative to say about that.
Yeah.
It's a really fun role, and I think we're looking to expand, as much more. So I don't do the TikTok thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
know that we have people that do, and I think it would be really fun. For example, if Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers somehow branched out onto TikTok. So it's fun to kind of talk about where we are now and how we kind of want to grow our social media presence.
Yep. Well, I think as much negativity and darkness that people associate with social media, it's also so entertaining, and there's so many talented people out there who put these videos together, and it just is
That's right.
bad, but it's wild and fun. So
Yes. Yeah. Twitter, which is really kind of where I put a lot of my focus. Twitter
sure,
can be an absolute cesspool,
sure,
and there are even some writers out there that are just absolutely toxic people. But the vast majority of the writers that I interact with on Twitter, it's 99% versus less than 1%, right? It
yeah, yeah,
makes it all worth it, and
yeah,
so, yeah.
yeah. Well, this has been just an absolutely fascinating conversation to me, and I, just thank you for sharing your process and your journey to this
Yeah,
date.
thank you.
We always like to wrap up with a book or a writer recommendation, so you can shine the light on another book or writer that you think more people should be paying attention to.
Okay, yeah. So, kind of honor of my space race nerdiness, The Apollo Murders by Chris Hadfield. It was a former astronaut and turned writer. Fantastic book, and also takes place during the space race, and took a subject that I saw the title on Amazon. I read the blurb, and I was like, oh, why didn't I think of this? This is fantastic. I do have a second book that I want to recommend. And this has nothing to do with historical fiction or anything like that. It's a young adult book. It's called The Poisons We Drink by Bethany Baptista. I hope I said her name right. And I don't read a lot of young adult. I read this, and it is fantastic. And I think anybody out there looking for a really good young adult read, The Poisons We Drink by Bethany Baptista, go out and get it. It's fantastic.
Absolutely terrific. Both both are much appreciated. I want to give a quick shout out to you and thank you for your snazzy new graphic for the podcast that you provided a few months back. And thank you for giving us a nice branded look that I really, really like a lot. So,
Oh, good. I'm glad you like it.
yeah. Kirk Rafferty, thank you so much for your time today, and we will catch up with you down the road.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. Take care.